there are so many people, I think, who've paved the way for us that I think we can continue to chronicle those stories to remind us that not only are we not alone in this snapshot in time, but over an arc of time, we have never been alone. And that we're part of a continua of human consciousness.
Hello, and welcome to Student Affairs Now. I'm your host, Keith Edwards. Today, we are introducing our new host, Dr. Mamta Accapadi. I'm also joined by Heather Shea to help me welcome Mamta to the team, pepper her with questions, and introduce her to all of you. As you know, Student Affairs Now is the premier podcast and online learning community for thousands of us who work in, alongside, or adjacent to the field of higher education and student affairs. We release new episodes every week on Wednesdays. Find details about this episode or browse our archives at studentaffairsnow.com. As I mentioned, I'm your host, Keith Edwards. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a speaker, consultant, and coach, and you can find out more about me at keithedwards.com. I'm broadcasting today from the snowy Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is at the intersections of the ancestral homelands of the Dakota in the Ojibwe peoples. Over to you, Heather.
Yes, and I am your other host, Heather Shea. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm broadcasting also from the snowy, ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, also home to the campus of Michigan State University, where I work. And I'm really excited for today's conversation. Mamta, thank you so much for agreeing to accept our invitation. A little bit about how we got here. As many of you know, we have 5 amazing folks who contribute as hosts on the Student Affairs Now channel. And one of our hosts, Dr. Susana Munoz, is taking a faculty sabbatical from her role at Colorado State University. And as such is also taking a short sabbatical from her hosting role with us. So we're really excited. Keith, back to you.
Yeah. Well, as we were thinking about and excited about Susanna's break and focus on her and some of the things she's doing, we wondered about adding someone, and we feel like we have a great set of hosts. We're doing lots of different episodes, doing lots of different things, but Heather and I couldn't help but banter around some different names and some different possibilities. And then Heather just kind of randomly threw out, I wonder about Mamta. And we both got super excited for all that Mamta brings in her humanity and her wholeness and her leadership and her role as an SSAO and leader in the profession and so many different things. And she's been a guest on 2 episodes, so she knows how this works. And so we just kind of were boldly in our starstruckness reached out, and she agreed to have a conversation with us. And I think we decided in about 3 minutes, yep, this is a great idea. Let's do it. So thank you for agreeing on our offer and for joining our host team. Mamta's actually been a part of the conversations for almost 2 months now, kind of behind the scenes. So she's heard some of the silliness as we have conversations with Glenn and Rochelle, and heard about some of the topics and some of the things we're doing and learning some of the behind the scenes. But we're excited to have your new episodes out and have you join the team. So Mamta, just tell folks who maybe don't know you a little bit about you and why you're excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. So first, I don't even know how to thank Keith, you and Heather, you as well, and the entire Student Affairs Now team, because you're telling your version of the story, right? My version of the story is, oh my gosh, like what an amazing opportunity. And I mean, I'm just so thankful to be a learner alongside all of you. I think you all bring and amplify wisdoms that I think need to be amplified. And so to be part of a team that is continually taking responsibility for our learning and growth and holding on to one another is super exciting. So, gosh, about me, I don't, let's see, where do I start? So right now, and I've always been this way. I'm a mom first. I'm always going to be a mom first. And I am back home in Austin, Texas. So my Texan accent is going to eventually come out, and that'll be fun. So when I say all y'all, then you know that I'm in the zone. My entire family is here. And, quite honestly, and one of the, I think, candid conversations that we are all having and need to continue to have is just when you think about the impact of the pandemic overall. And for me, I had a couple of transitions, personal and professional, during that time. There was just a moment where I was like, I'm being pulled in too many directions. I need to center well-being for myself and for my family. And I didn't necessarily know what that looked like. And so it made sense to come back home to figure it out. And so, as the young people say, I think I'm taking a gap year.
I love it.
And I just in full candor, I want to own the class privilege that allows me to be able to do that. I don't think necessarily that we all get that opportunity. So I want to just own that there's a class privilege that allows me to do that. And I want to be really
and not all with the privilege
Yeah.
to do it. So kudos to you on the
Yeah.
wisdom and the action to claim what you need and make it happen.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Beyond that, I'm learning all sorts of new things. So I'm even more in a dance studio and more on a field. More about that later. That story will come out as we talk. But it's truly grateful. I think I can't remember a time, like, even hearing you describe a person when you attribute that identity to me, and I just feel like I need to come clean, and that's not who I am. I mean, I am generally a disaster. And so, but what it's made me realize is that the person you describe is a person that I'm striving to be. And I realize that I can perform groundedness. I can, in air quotes, perform groundedness, but am I really that? And what does the hard work that is required to actually be that? Because I think it's important for us to own that to get to that grounded place is very hard work. So I just want to own that with this group too. And
well, we can argue about your groundedness if you want, but I'll just say for people who can't, she's actually sitting on the floor right now. So
right. Well, I just want to say I so appreciate you, and it was such a joy that you said yes to our invitation to join us, because you and I met, I believe it's at an ASPA conference, but I like instantly gravitated to the energy that you bring. And Keith and Rochelle and Nat and Glenn and I really value the community of learners, and the ability for us all to kind of come to this space to talk about hard things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if there's anybody I want to have those kinds of conversations with, it's with Mamta. So I am so grateful that you agreed, and that you're you have so many cool ideas. But I am kind of curious, like when we reached out to you, what made this something you were excited about? I mean, we feel grateful that you're joining us, but what were some of the things that kind of came up for you as you were like thinking and pondering this idea?
Yeah. So I think, again, one of the things that of the many things that I love about student affairs now is I feel, well, there's an entire continuum. So in singular episodes, there are blooms, so to speak. There are blooms of consciousness that come in the singular episodes. And then in aggregate, there is the opportunity for consciousness to shift. And it's through the constellation of stories, right? And so for me, storytelling is a big part of who I am. And so the invitation that I heard from all of you was, let's add to the repository of stories together, because we all listen and tell stories differently. And so when we expand that repository of stories for our colleagues and folks who are listening to the podcast, there's just, a different way of listening and telling stories. And that just meant the world to me. And I think right now, in a time when we're not holding on to each other as people and as a society, you create this space where we can hold on to each other. And that's frankly the most important work we need to be doing right now. So in this invitation, you're allowing me to walk towards living my own purpose, which, I need to do that self-work. So just really grateful for that invitation. yeah, that
Well,
was
if you
what was
want to
going through
argue
my
about
head.
your
Yeah.
centeredness, I would just reference the evidence of the past 3 minutes. So go ahead,
Oh.
blooms of consciousness and wisdom
I love it.
and all of that. And I think you're reminding me. I mean, I love doing the podcast because I'm a learner, and we get to talk about things that worry us or concern us or excite us or bring us joy or bring us life. And then we get to have an excuse to say, who are 3 or 4 really smart folks I get to talk about with this, invite them in, and then we get to have the conversations and they get to learn and get to do that. But then also the relationship building, just getting to connect with people you haven't connected with for a while and connect for the first time with people has been really great. And just getting to know people and the conversations before you hit the record button and the laughter usually after hitting the record button and all of that has been really great. Well, as we mentioned, you've been a part of the conversations with our host team. Folks who don't know, we meet for an hour every Thursday morning as folks are able, and we laugh and we catch up and we talk about the snow, and we talk about our families, we talk about Heather's cat, who often makes a starring debut. And we talk about the profession, and we talk about the newest things we're learning, and we talk about the great things that people are saying, and we talk about the things that really worry and concern us. And those have been really great. And as you mentioned, you're bringing a whole new perspective, a whole new network, a whole new set of conversations, a whole new set of folks who you want to be in conversation with for your own learning and to highlight. So just share with folks some of the things. I mean, there's too many where you don't have enough time, but some of the things you're kind of thinking about that you want to bring together.
Well, so again, drawing from the wisdoms of past of podcasts of the past, you know, one of the educators I think that's had a strong influence in how I consider or think of or my ability to open my capacity to think about things is Laura Rendon, right? When you think about her concept of senti pensante pedagogy. And so in her book, you know, she talks about this concept called testimonios or stories, right? And story, like testimonio is not quite a story. It's a little bit like there's more to that, like things get lost in translation. And one of my colleagues, Vijay Kanagala, who was, I should call it, he's very much a brother to me. Vijay was one of her former doctoral students and does his own research at ASH. I guess it was, last year, maybe 2 years ago. We co-presented on this concept of kathas, which is it's a South Asian term in different languages, which also means stories, or if I could translate that in my interpretation of the word, sacred stories, or stories that are sacred over lineages, right? So those two words and any kind of notion of story and the expansiveness of that is kind of what is inspiring or challenging me to think about the types of conversations I want to, or the folks that I want to learn from on the podcast and community with all of you. And so I'm really excited to connect with a couple of my Indigenous Indigenous identified educators to think about Indigenous wisdoms that you know that have informed our truths all along, and you know, we may not think about that, or we may not think about how we name Indigenous wisdoms in our daily practice. So that is really exciting. I think I'm really excited to think about how we think about social change. So educators that are looking at social change frameworks in different ways, you know, just, you know, wanting to bring those perspectives. And I love when you always say student affairs and student affairs adjacent or higher ed adjacent. I think there's a lot to be said for kind of drawing, you know, from people who are really trying to figure this thing out and be parts of healing across the board. The last reflection, I always keep this book in front of me, so you'll often see me lift it. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. I think this is one of the closest. I mean, I come from a spiritual tradition, but when I am often grappling, I've read this book many times. I tab it all the time. But this idea, right, between stimulus response, there is space, right, and within that space is our capacity to grow. And so I think we get to occupy that space, and we can expand it to, to be part of that journey to freedom.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because I think I often experience these conversations as a step out of time. One, they're not live.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we have the conversation and then people listen to it later. So there's a step out of
Yes.
time. But oftentimes it feels like the conversations are people stepping out of the busyness of their emails, their class prep, their next meeting, the student crisis, their being on call. And then for just an hour or less, they get to really think and be and reflect and share. And it's really interesting to me how many guests wrote a whole book and then have new ideas in the conversation.
Yes.
Right? Or I've never thought about it
Yeah.
like that. Or now I'm, I've already said it on this. Now you're helping remind me about this or connecting me with this. And so I love that you're helping me think about it in a different way, as sort of this, that space between, which I think is really lovely.
Well, I think, as I was reflecting on my own, the set of circumstances or journeying that brings me to this point in community with both of y'all, I think about, this is I've actually have never stopped to, like, I think I was pretending to be present, but I am just now, like in the past, when I say just now, truly in the past, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, really understanding what being present actually means. I think I was performing what being present actually means. And so, and it's been so restorative. And so if, like, again, not if, we do co-create that in this space, as you mentioned, right? We can, I can look at the repository of experiences and decide, this is how I want to be present in this snapshot of my time. And I think that's it's the kind of healing that I think we all deserve and can gift ourselves, and thankfully that y'all have created that space is really exciting. Yeah.
What you're saying really resonates with me, and I am really conscious of the fact that this podcast was born, during the pandemic, when I think all of us, speaking for myself, felt really isolated from my community and my support network. And like, as I've reflected on that journey over the past several years, as Keith said, some of our conversations are very timely. Others of them kind of span time and are kind of infinitely useful. But when I think about the most important lesson I've learned, it's that ability to slow down and be in community and conversation with folks and explore topics that I think, are issues of our time. There are issues of our field, of those who work in, alongside, or adjacent, right? But we're all trying to, I think, figure out, like, what is it that we need as people to be effective, both with students on our campus, but also effective as humans.
Yes.
Because we all live our whole lives, right? We have children, we have, other things that are calling us. And so building this as a part of that has been such a fantastic and exciting thing to be a part of. So I love every new iteration, and I'm so excited for you to be a part of this next chapter, Mamta.
Well, it's Heather, you have me thinking about just how necessary this was in general, but even more so over the pandemic. And again, we talk about that in that snap, like the time and the timelessness, right? We're in time, but we snap out of time. Both of y'all have kind of referenced that. And I have to tell you, going back to Keith, one of the, when you talked about, like, oh, what are some conversations we're looking forward to? I think about, I'm not sure there's a space. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. However, this space feels, for me, very accessible to hear and listen from the wisdoms of people who have also come before us. I yeah, I'm going to frame it this way. I'm not trying to sit in a space of ageism in my culture, aging and respecting and honoring elders, right? There, that happens in many spaces, but when we listen to elders, we hear that some things have repeated, right? That there in the human experiences, there
Yeah.
are repetitions of things. So, when you hear a restorative set of reflections from Larry Roper, like where is that recorded anywhere? And so
Mhm.
if somebody wanted to learn and understand those wisdoms many years down the road, we have that, right? As a repository. There are so many people, I think, who've paved the way for us that I think we can continue to chronicle those stories to remind us that not only are we not alone in this snapshot in time, but over an arc of time, we have never been alone.
Mhm.
And that we're part of a continua of human consciousness. And that, I think sometimes we forget that too.
Yeah.
So I he hasn't committed, but one of the people that I'm actually really excited to make sure that we can have him on Student Affairs Now is Pat Hayashi. He quite honestly is one of the most courageous educators I have met in my life, and every time I hear him reflect on journeys ahead, when I am feeling that I don't have enough courage or enough time, I listen to him and I can breathe better. And I also have a reminder that the courage will come because it's
Mhm.
it's an infinite part of who we are. So those kinds of amplifying those
Just
kinds of stories.
just say a little bit more about who Pat Hayashi is for folks who don't know, because until you mentioned, I had no idea who that was.
Yeah. So, well, no introduction that I offer is going to be adequate to describe Pat Hayashi. The way that I mean, he is currently retired, although he would probably say he's not retired because Pat Hayashi has
Yeah.
reinvented himself over time many, many times. But at the point of his retirement, he was the senior most Asian American administrator within the state of California, right? And he played a significant role in conversations related to affirmative action and admissions.
Mhm.
He has engaged in tough conversations with the College Board, but his entire perspective has always been around access, equity, inclusion,
Mhm.
and making sure that people have access
Mhm.
to opportunities in higher education, which leads to personal freedom, I believe. So
Yeah.
he's done so much more since then, but I'll save that for
Yeah.
him to reveal in his podcast.
Well, I'm excited for that conversation. And you're talking
Mhm.
about in our very first conversation before we even launched the podcast,
Mhm.
Susanna said um, she talked about being restorative and
Yeah.
rejuvenating, and the rest of us latched onto that and have really
Mhm.
centered that. And here you're talking about groundedness and consciousness and healing and timelessness. So it's sort of funny that the conversations that guided us before we had even recorded a single megabyte are you're
Mhm.
kind of circling back as our newest host, coming back to some of those same themes of importance, and while obviously talk with different people about different things and have the conversations in different ways, which is really, really great.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is that I think we are bringing up things that we're probably looking for ourselves, not because we
For
figured it
sure.
out, right? It's because we're
Yeah.
like, I'm seeking this. And so as I
Yes.
seek, I want to share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the best conversations, I think, too. And it's partially sometimes, and Keith, you alluded to this a little bit, like when you're having a great conversation and then you realize, oh my gosh, this could be a whole nother episode in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So there's also a generative quality to this conversation. The other piece that I think that we're also pushing back against is that we can form true connection through a virtual medium and through virtual space, right? And we can have authentic conversations and really, I think, individually learn and grow, but also provide something, to the larger world. And so I also love hearing from people like, oh, we should host an episode on this, or oh, we should, think a
Hmm.
little bit about that. And I think some of the episodes that have really transcended time have been those that have been suggested by folks. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for those new things. They're like, oh, Mamta's on. Oh my gosh, she could host a
No.
conversation about this. So that'd be great.
Well, I'm super curious because you mentioned dance studios and fields
Oh,
and
yeah.
said we'd come back to it. So before we wrap up, I can't let that go.
So, I'm pretty sure I have my daughter's permission. I'm big on consent. So I'm pretty sure I have my daughter's permission to tell this story. And I promise this is 100% accurate, air quotes, accurate. No, in full candor, this is how my rendition of the story. Perhaps, she should have been sitting next to me to, chime in and correct. But since she's not here,
I think we'll get her on here sooner or later. Yeah.
Take some creative license here.
Yeah.
We should have a kids episode.
We really do.
Yeah.
So I kid you not. It felt like it was 6 weeks ago, but now that you've reminded me that I've been in our community for about 2 months, so maybe 8 weeks ago, I swear she woke up one morning and she was like, I think I want to play lacrosse. My inside voice said, can you catch a ball? I'm a student affairs. I'm a student
Let
affairs
alone
educator.
in a
I'm
net,
student,
right?
yes. And my outside voice said, tell me more. That's really interesting.
Classic student affairs.
Help me understand. Yeah.
Tell me more.
I want to hear more about this. And she said, I think I want to try something different. And so I'm like, okay, like try something different. Lacrosse. Like, how is that the something different that you got to, right? There's painting, there's all the things. And this is not about my resistance to lacrosse at all. I have no resistance to that. It was just so different from the journey that she and I have been along together. So I was like, where did this come from? Because mind you, before that, it's all been dance studios, dance classes, over 20 hours a week in some form of some kind of dance. So this, a team sport has not been part of her, like what I've seen her express interest in. And so I was sure the goddesses of the universe were going to handle this for me. So I was like, yeah, let's go to the lacrosse clinic. That's great. And lacrosse is not big in the South as it is in the Northeast and certainly, in kind of different geographies. So it's an emerging thing here in Texas. But anyway, to fast forward a bit, we go to the clinic. She looks like she's doing pliés on the field. I am the
She's
parent
bringing the dance to lacrosse.
Yes. And I was the parent who was laughing at, not with, her child. And I was like, oh, thank you, goddesses of the universe. You have handled this for me. She's going to get we're going to be done. This is going to be done. She comes off the field. And so I'm sitting with her in my purely, actually very sarcastically open-minded self. And I say to her, so, what do we think? How are we feeling? And she was like, I feel so alive. I want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so I was
say
like,
no to that.
I was like, oh, okay. I was like, so we're doing this. And she said, yes, we have to do this. And in fairness, my daughter's 14, there's always going to be power dynamic and growth moments, right? Between any parent and their young person. So I'm really proud of her because I think she could obviously sense my skepticism. And she looked at me and she said something that I've said hundreds of times. And she said, Mama, she was like, I can hear that you have questions about this, but what if this is the moment that changes my entire life?
Wow.
And I said, right. And so, and so again, like as we come full circle to our reflections, this conversation, I actually do have very critical reflections for myself. Where do I practice what I say? Because that was a moment, that was a reminder of you need to our work is not just about these delivery of learning moments. It is an active practice towards liberation. That means we have to practice and we have to practice being all the time because we can get rusty in that. So yes, lacrosse. So we just spent the past weekend. She played her first games of lacrosse ever. and it has been fun watching her. Just, and she will say it. She's like, "I'm terrible, but it's so much fun." um,
Wonderful.
There is
no.
something about that kind of learner moment though too, right? It's that rookie
Yes.
smarts. I think we should do an episode on that at some
Yeah.
point. Like the first time you do something new, you just have this like, oh my gosh, this is really, really fun. It also
Yeah.
reminds me, and as a parent of a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, like is it Khalil Gibran's
Yes.
poem, on children, like our children are not our children, right? Like they are reflections, but like we only have so much influence. And I went about to go to college and I'm like, oh my gosh, have I done enough, right? and
Mhm.
and then there's also that kind of like letting go
Mhm.
moment. But whenever they test something, right, test a new concept, a new idea, a new sport, a new identity, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, this is so exciting. And also like never would have guessed that that
Mhm.
was going to emerge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like lacrosse.
Well, yeah, and as our for me, I don't think it has to be this way, but for if I'm holding myself accountable, I would say as I've gone on my own journey, my desire for certainty has probably increased over time, right? Like
Mhm.
I feel like I need that more, but in that desire for certainty, maybe I've lost like that's maybe I've lost my creativity, and not lost it, but it can be it's just nice to have reminders
Yeah.
around you, right? That okay, like there's so much beauty in the uncertainty,
Yeah.
and so play in that. And that's, I think that's how I'm feeling kind of as I join
Yeah.
this community, right? Like I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're gonna get there
Well, here you
together.
are craving
Yeah.
certainty and taking a gap year and hosting a new podcast and going to
Yes.
lacrosse games. I think you're doing great at getting in touch with that. So here's to new things and new adventures. Well, as folks
Absolutely.
know, we're running out of time, and we always end with the podcast of Student Affairs Now. What are you thinking, troubling, pondering now? Heather, what's with you now?
Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking about all of the wisdom of the people who we need to talk to, right?
Mhm.
And your point, Mapta, about capturing that moment, because I do think there's something really valuable as we consider the history of our work and roles. So yeah, what I'm thinking about is like I got to get on the phone with some of those folks who have been my mentors and see
Mhm.
if I can schedule time with them.
Mhm.
Um, they're formative moments. That's what I'm thinking about. Keith,
Right.
what about you?
I'm thinking about death is what I'm thinking about. We're recording this
Mm,
a day after shootings at
yeah,
University of Virginia,
my
and
former
University of
campus.
Idaho.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about I'm thinking about some of the people who we wanted to have those conversations, like
Hmm.
who we won't be able to because they've passed. And so
Hmm.
I'm feeling that kind of sense of urgency as we're talking about some of the wisdom of elders and mentors and people who have formed the field, to make sure that we jump on that while we still have the opportunity and don't get so busy caught up in
Hmm.
the newest book release of the moment, but
Hmm.
and do some of those things. So I'm thinking about death as a catalyzing force, the grief and also the motivation behind that. How about you, Mamta?
Well, I one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, so it's in this moment, but it's been iterative,
Mhm.
is how do we hold on to each other
Mm.
amidst all of these things that continue to happen? How do we stay present, hold sacred those moments for what they are, and hold on to each other? I think I am somebody who copes probably by going back into the busyness. That is kind of
Mm. Hmm.
my natural tendency.
Mhm.
And what would it mean to really feel uh, those moments that are happening fully, as a way to connect with one another differently,
Mhm.
because those moments are it's the moments that are written, and so they will continue to happen. What we have the ability to do is shift how we hold on to each other and lift one another up during those times.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you both. Mamta, we're so glad you joined the team. Thank you. And you've been brilliant and wise contributors to our conversations as a host team. And I feel a little selfish that we haven't been able to share that out with everybody else. So we'll get to that. We can't wait to listen to your episodes and share what you are thinking and asking the people you want to be in conversation with so many more folks. It'll be a great gift to the profession. So thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, a huge shout out to our producer, Nat Ambrosi, who does all the behind the scenes work to make us look and sound good and is uncomfortable every time we say this, and she has to listen to it. So thank you, Nat.
We love you, Nat.
And if you're listening today and not already receiving our newsletter, please visit our website at studentaffairsnow.com. Scroll to the bottom of the homepage to add your email to our MailChimp list. While you're there, check out the archives. I'm Keith Edwards with Heather Shea and Mamta Accapadi, our newest host. Thank you all so much. And to everyone who is watching and listening, please make it a great week.